والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين شفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وحبيب قلوبنا بالقاسم محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وآله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين وأصحابه المنتجبين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد، السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We are celebrating the occasion of the birth of the two grand personalities that inspired us and never cease to move us towards goodness and righteousness. Our appreciation for them is the appreciation of humanity, appreciation of the lofty objectives and the rank that we are destined to attain. These people, when examined properly, are not people who are belonging to a particular sect nor to a religion. They belong to humanity at large, and their appreciation is not curtailed to a group of people who say that they relate to them. Their appreciation is for humanity at large, if they were exposed adequately to the rest of humanity. Humans as humans aspire certain qualities. We aspire to be in a particular place. We are hardwired with certain beauty within us, and we yearn and we seek that beauty. And whoever represents that beauty that is hidden deep within us, we immediately relate to it. We beings, we need these role models to display these wonderful gems of humanity and godliness, so that we can aspire to the same, because that is the same humanity, same godliness that awaits within us our reception. These people, when we look at them, they transcend limitations. Their qualities are those befitting qualities that all of us must have. And we are blessed and we are fortunate to have them so accessible and so directly with us. For example, before we go into the character of this grand Abbas ibn Ali and the spirituality of our fourth Imam, let us just briefly talk about ourselves. We appreciate valor, gallantry, bravery, loyalty, defiance, and resilience. We ourselves want to look up to somebody that can stand in the face of defeat and challenge destiny and take the reins of destiny and direct it elsewhere. We appreciate one who stands in front of a mighty army and says, my self-worth and dignity is beyond the threatening swords that stand before me. We appreciate a person who will have their heads cut rather than submitting in humility to anybody else. There is something inside us. There is a cry that I am worth more than this, that I cannot sell myself to this world, nor can I be pacified through the threats of this world. Imagine one who is so resilient that when his arm is cut, he says, by God, even if you were to cut my arm, I shall never cease to defend the faith of my Imam and the truth that he bears. Imagine when we see such defiance and resilience, it inspires us. I was watching a documentary where the Afghan women, when the Russians were occupying Afghanistan, were being interviewed. And this interviewer asked these women, and he said to them, or she said to them, that you do not fear that your 14-year-old children go with TNT strapped around them, and they go beneath the raging Russian tanks and detonate themselves and they explode. Those women did not have any grief upon their expressions. They were casually talking. They said, no, if Zainab can send her own and Muhammad, then why can't we send our own? It is a point, this want for liberation from every form of oppression. There is something within us that we want this liberation at every cost, and that is more productive and yielding and giving more satisfaction than losing our own. Again, if you look at the Lebanese, and obviously I talked with them, the fathers who had lost their children, they said, no. Somebody said to me, my child went and he just blew himself up in front of a tank. And I said, how old was he? He said, 18. And I said, and? They said, and what? If Ali Akbar can do it, why can't we? They inspire us. And if we look at the marhum, at the story of marhum Imam Khomeini, when he was in Paris, when the people of Shah had imposed a curfew, Imam Khomeini said, the late Imam Khomeini said, if you were to spill into the streets, Shah would be no longer. And hundreds of thousands of women wearing white garments symbolizing kafan, they came out into the streets beating their chests and saying, Ya Hussein. Shah had to flee. He fled the whole country. He left it behind. The army, for those of us who are obviously present at that time, we remember how they were shooting the crowds. And the more they shot, the more came. Just the beating of their chest, Ya Hussein, and walking in front of the bullets. The armies, the army personnel would leave their tankers and join the crowds and take off their army clothes. This is how we are. We appreciate people who symbolize for us this want of freedom, this want of dignity. I would much rather give my life than to submit to any other human being. For I was created by the one, like whom there is no another. This head will only bow to him. We are hardwired somehow in there. And when this Abbas represents this resilience, this defiance, this courage and this bravery, it does not cease to inspire people. Now, it is not only the people who call themselves their followers like the Shias, it's the Muslims at large, it's humanity at large, whether a believer or non-believer. We all come with this want inside us. Even if we don't acknowledge God at a formalistic level because it might not make sense, we can't deny this want of liberation from within us. We can't deny that we are dignified people and we want to stand in dignity, not in humility. Hazrat Abbas was somebody like this. He was par excellent. His bravery, his strength is something that we can't talk about. It is said in a hadith that when he would mount his steed, his feet would touch the ground. This is how tall he was. This is what his stature was. And it is also said that whenever somebody would be put to death on the day of Ashura, Shimr would ask, who has been killed? And when the name was given, he would say, what about Abbas? And it is said that Shimr had no smile on his face until he heard the cries of jubilation emanating from the Al-Qamah. He said, what has happened? They said, Abbas has been killed. For the first time, Shimr smiled. He said, now Hussein will not escape. Imagine, one man is causing such terror in the hearts of his enemies, who are unending. About Abbas, it is said that his stature was lofty like a mountain, and his soul was like a momentous wave. He was fearless amidst showering arrows and cutting blades. A warrior that would cut the ranks of the enemies in two. Fearlessly he would advance in a way that none other would advance. It is said that at a point, Imam Ali gave Muhammad ibn Hanafiya the standard, and Muhammad ibn Hanafiya went to an extent that he retreated. He gave it to Abbas, who tore the ranks of the enemies in Siffin. When Abbas was born, Salamullah alayhi, Ali raised him in his hands, and then he shed tears, and he kissed Abbas's arms. They said, why? He said, by God, he will have them cut. He will have them cut in the love of his brother. The Imam says, Abbas has such lofty stature and ranks, ranked that on the day of Qiyamah, people will look at the summit of the Arsh and they will find radiant lights. They will ask, whose lights are these? They will be told, these are the lovers of Hussein, who gave their lives for Hussein. They will ask, whose is that light crowning all lights? And they will be told, that is Abbas ibn Ali. It is said that at that point, the awliya and the awsiya will become envious of that rank. The sixth Imam said that Allah has replaced his two arms with wings, and he takes flights within the folds of paradise with Ja'far Tayyar. And if a person were to know the true rank of this man, Allah would not deny him whatever he wishes from Allah through the nobility of this one. About Abbas, it is said he had many alqab. He had many titles, amongst which are Babul Hawaij, the bearer of the water skin. He is known as Saqqa Sakina. He has many titles, but the most prominent was Hamilul Liwa, the bearer of the standard. Now, this is something about Abbas. Imam Ali used to say that let none bear the standard save the most gallant, the most fearless, the most godly, the most pious of you. For the standard is the morale of the whole of the army. Once the standard falls, the army falls. There have been many standard bearers who have been killed in battles alongside the Prophet. In Siffin there were many as well. But only a few have bore the standard to an extent that the arm has fallen first. Ja'far Tayyar. It is said that when the spoils of war were being brought into the court of Yazid, together with Ahlul Bayt, he looked in a direction, and in a state of awe, he stood from his seat on his throne. Then he sat again. His eye fell on that standard again. He stood. He said, whose standard is that? There is no place on that standard that has not been struck, save for the place where the standard was held. They said, that is the standard of Abbas, the son of Ali, the brother of Hussein. He says, by Allah, O Abbas, you refuse to submit. This is how the assistance of a brother is for his brother. Abbas was known for his bravery, courage, and fearlessness. Of course, I do not wish to recite any Masai, but I think it's in place to say these few things as we advance into this brief talk. That whenever, and I hear this from Abakirin, that whenever Zainab used to be told that the enemies will burn the tent, she would often wonder, where would my Abbas be at that point? And whenever Sakina was told, you will thirst, she would be confused. But will my uncle Abbas not bring water? And indeed, when Hussein ibn Ali was told, you will be killed, he would often wonder, where will my Abbas be? He was the pillar of strength of the Ahlul Bayt. Now, about Abbas, we obviously venerate him for his strength, his bravery in those few hours. And it was something to venerate. It is something to venerate, his defiance, his resilience. But according to the Hadith, Abbas was a reciter of the Quran, had insight into religion, Nafidul Basira, Sulbul Iman, according to Imam Sadiq. He had penetrative insight and was staunch in his faith, unwavering. I want to talk about the real strength of this man, though. The real strength of this man. In any case, in the battle of Siffin, Imam Ali says to his companions, observe the swordsmanship of my Hassan and my Hussein. So they observed. They said, Amir al-Mu'mineen, if it is not audacious, may we say something? He said, indeed. They said, your Hassan fights well, like you do. But as far as Hussein is concerned, there is somebody behind him, masked, who does not let anybody approach your Hussein but kills them and puts them to death first. We are unable to see the swordsmanship of your Hussein because of this person. He said, that is his brother Abbas. He will not be his Hussein. It is said in the Battle of Siffin, they said to Ali, why do you send Muhammad ibn Hanafiya and Abbas? Why do you restrain from sending Al-Hasan and Al-Hussein? He said, they are the children of the Prophet. These are my children. Those are my eyes. These are my hands. So, and it is the role of the hands to protect the eyes. Abbas's fighting skills and swordsmanship at the age of 13 or 14. Ali Salamullah was renowned for his swordsmanship. Salam. Yes. Imam Ali was renowned for his swordsmanship. So it is said that when he would go on the horse, he would turn sideways and move his blade, that it would appear that effortlessly he is killing people. Now what would happen there in the Battle of Siffin? It was Arab custom. From time to time they would engage in a full combat, and from time to time it would be single combat. So when the warring parties would rest, they would engage in single combat. Now Imam Ali would never advance into the battlefield because nobody would come to fight him. Nobody would dare. So what he would do would be, he would put the face mask, naqab, on his face, and then he would enter the battlefield so that nobody recognizes him. And it was only when he unsheathed his sword and unleashed it that they would recognize this is Ali. A warrior enters the battlefield, calls for his equal. A renowned warrior comes from Syria. Effortlessly, he rides in front of him, and the man falls off his steed. They cry out. They said, enter not the battlefield. This is Ali deceiving you. A cry. The confusion intensified. Imam Ali came from behind. He said, I am Ali ibn Abi Talib. And as he unmasked Abbas, the Mu'arrikh this is Abbas, the radiant moon of the Hashimis. Such was the stature of Abbas. But when we look at the true strength of Abbas, we find it elsewhere. Zuhair comes to Abbas in the morning of Ashura. My intention is not to recite Masai, but just to explain something. Then he says to Abbas, Abbas Salamullah was guarding the tents. They had dug a trench so that the enemy could not ambush from the rear side. Abbas was guarding the tents. Zuhair came. He said, Abbas, do you know why your father sought you from Allah? Abbas stood. He said, this is no time for talk, but you have mentioned the name of my father, and I will pause in veneration for my father. Say what you have to. He said, your father sought you for such a day. He said, Zuhair, are you inciting me? Watch. As Abbas said this, somebody cried out, Hussein, do you invite yourself to the fire before God throws you into the fire? Because of the trench that he had built and filled it with reed and firewood and set it alight. He said, Hussein, do you prepare the fire for yourself in this world before God plunges you into the fire in the hereafter? Abbas, in a state of rage, goes behind that man. It is said that in this offensive, he kills 80 people, takes the spear of that man and with his left hand beheads him. He comes back to Zuhair and says, Zuhair, don't incite me again. Such is the might of this man. But look at his true strength. Look at this man's true strength. It is said that he pushes the door of Walid and Marwan. He is in a state of rage. Hussein places his hand on the chest of Abbas. He says, Abbas, calm your soul. Later on, Zainab sees Abbas's state. He is struggling. And she says, oh brother, what brings you to this state? He said, they threatened his life. And I stood there. The strength of his soul. Again, we see him unhinging the pegs of the tents. And his soul is filled with rage. But he controls himself because his brother forbids him. Imagine the strength of his soul. He enters into the Alqama. He grabs water, raises it to his mouth. Do you know why he did this? Great man, their steed will never drink before them. His horse was refusing to drink water. Until they make a gesture that I'm drinking, that's when the horse begins to drink. But look at this point of Abbas. He takes water, raises it, and then he looks at water. And he says, oh soul, submit to Allah, for it does not befit you to exist after Hussein. This is Hussein, surrounded, thirsty. Shall you drink of the cold water, man? In a rage, he throws it. And he says, Wallah ma hadha fi aludini. By Allah, this is not Abbas's religion. What wrong would it have been for Abbas to take a sip of water at that point? That is the strength and the soul of Abbas. Have you seen a man who is renowned for his qualities, and how that person, when their qualities are taken away, they collapse with them? If a person is renowned for the wealth that they have, when their wealth is taken away, the person is ruined. When a person is renowned for oratory, and God forbid if they get a stroke, and then they stutter, can you see, they lose their humanity. Abbas is renowned for his strength. By Allah, his right arm is cut, and he cries out, even if you were to cut my arm, I will never cease to defend my brother. His other arm is cut. He cries out, they have cut my left arm. The true strength of God, Abbas, is that godly strength in his character, is in his soul, beyond his man, beyond his arms. Now look at how Allah venerates this Abbas. Salamullah alayhi. Look at how he venerates him. When the sun comes out, the stars fade away, don't they? Next to Hussein are married Akbar and Asghar, Salamullah alayhi. 72 to 110 companions. Habib at the front door of Hussein. But when we go to Imam Hussein, the Sahaba, anyone Hazrat Ali Akbar are eclipsed, aren't they? We only see Hussein. We remember them all in ziyarah, but we pray the 2 rakat salah for the ziyarah of Imam Hussein, don't we? Look at how Allah respects Abbas. He keeps Abbas at a distance so that his ziyarah is performed independently. Imam Sadiq enters the shrine of Imam Hussein and salutes Imam Hussein from one direction, then Hazrat Ali Akbar, then the Shuhada, then prays 2 rakat. Goes into the shrine of Abbas, salutes Abbas from one direction, then another one, then the third direction, and then the fourth one. Look at how this Abbas is venerated. Allah does not even allow the brilliance of Imam Hussein to eclipse this great man. Abbas is Bab al-Hawaij. I want to quickly move into the second part of this talk. Bab al-Hawaij, obviously, when somebody enjoys such a prominent place with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if we were to ask Allah through Abbas, Allah will not refuse. It stands to reason. And we know here how the Bedouins and the Arabs, they go to the shrine of Abbas and they shout at that shrine and say, "Oh, Abbas, by you being here, how dare this happens to me?" I'll just narrate a little story that occurred at the time of the great Shaykh Ansari. There was a poor student. He was strained in his means while studying in Najaf. Finally, he gives up. And he says, "I will leave and go back to Iran." So he goes to the shrine of, I have read it somewhere. He goes to the shrine of Imam Hussein, reads his ziyarah, and bids him farewell. Then goes to the shrine of Abbas. As he sits there, a Bedouin woman comes. And she starts screaming and shouting and threatening Abbas. And she says, "My son is lost. How dare, whilst you are Abbas in Karbala, can my son be lost? Oh, Abbas, bring him back to me at this very moment. I demand this from you." They're very naive, very simple. As she was shouting and screaming, in a little while the people bring a little child and they say, "Oh, woman, maid of God, is this your child?" And she says, "Yes." Her eyes are filled with tears and she thanks Allah. And that young man sits there, observes the scenes. The scene, he says, "Abbas, it is because she is yours. She is an Arab like you. I am a foreigner. We have no value." He entertains this thought. He wanted to stay there for 10 years to finish his studies. And he was staying in a place that he had rented, but he liked a lot. He went back to Najaf. As he was preparing to leave, a student comes to him and says, "Shaykh Ansari would like to see you." When he goes to Shaykh Ansari says, "That house, I'm gifting it to you. And this money that is enough for 10 years study, I'm giving it to you in advance." Now that young man is baffled, because secretly he was desiring to own that house and wanted enough provision to allow him to study for 10 years. Dumbfounded, he said, "But why?" He said, "Don't underestimate Abbas ibn Ali. This is Abbas. It is true that this man inspires us. He brings us to the fullness of our existence." I'm just going to say one or two more things here. Imagine. Human dignity does not allow us to lower these heads to other than Allah. Imagine a person who stands defiant against 30,000 swords. He is carrying with him our spirit and the want for this dignity and defiance and resilience. And that is why we venerate him to this extent. Humanity at large feels this way, and he represents that strength. On the other hand, we come to this blessed Imam, who is torn through grief. Nothing of him remains. Everything of his ego and arrogance has been taken away. He has been reduced to nothingness, and from there arises godliness. What he observes, his soul is crushed. Through suffering and through pain does he grow. When you read this Sahifa and you see his character, we will come to this conclusion that this soul has been nurtured by the hand of God. He has been brought up by God. This is how much this soul has been purged of itself and its ego. This is how much the suffering have burned itself away and left nothing but the purity of godliness inside him. Imagine, when Muhammad ibn Hamdallah revolts in Medina against the governor of Yazid, somebody takes refuge in the house of Imam Sajjad. He allows him. At his departure, he says, "You have not recognized me. Yes, I am the killer of your brother." He said, "But I have recognized you." He said, "Then why have you given me sanctity?" He said, "That is what my religion demands of me. That is what my God expects of me." He said, "But we did this to you." He said, "We were your guests at that point. At this point, you are our guest." Look at this soul. Now look at us. We are in this world for a mere 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 years. What will we attain? Nabi Nuh, according to the hadith of the 60 Imam, lived for 2,500 years. When the angel went to Nabi Nuh and he said, "I have to take you now, your time is over," he said, "Am I permitted to go from the sun into the shade?" He said, "Indeed, friend of God. Go to the shade and I'll take you there." And Nabi Nuh looked at him and he said, "My 2,500 years of life was as brief as this motion of mine, going from underneath the sun to the shade." The angel of death baffled. He said, "But you do know that there will be people who will come after you, whose lives will be mere 60, 50, 70 years. He said, "Really?" He said, "If I had such a life, I would spend it in one prostration." Nabi Nuh. This is the brevity of life. It's small. What will we take with us? Think about this very carefully. There is nothing in this world that is coming with us. How strange. Even the blackness of the beard turns into whiteness. How strange are these people who cannot retain the blackness of their hair. What else will they retain? Houses, wealth. Think about this. Sometimes we take utmost pleasure in our prestige, in our names, in our achievements. Nobody was more prestigious than Sulaiman. Nobody conquered more than Sulaiman. Nobody contributed more than Sulaiman. How many of the 7 billion people remember Sulaiman? If the great Sulaiman has become forgotten, then what of me and you? Where are the great names? Who remembers them? In 7 billion people, every corner has a great name. How many will you remember? Even in the digital age where everything is recorded, nobody has the time to go back to it. The only people who will go back to it are the angels on the day of Qiyamah. They will be the ones who remember us, and when they open everything and say, "Okay, let's see your prestige now." What do we take with us? We take nothing. And that is the sorrowful thing. We take nothing. And there is something to take. And what is that something? That something is godliness within ourselves. You see, the thing is, we start finding everything and we can't keep anything. And the one thing that is always with us for us to keep, we overlook it. Our Allah is there to be found. He says, "I'm with you wherever you are. Turn to me. I'm your friend. You are coming back to me. Nothing else will be with you." Everything other than Allah we take, but we can't keep. The one that is with us, we fail to recognize him. This Imam shows us so clearly that the goal of all goals is to recognize Allah, is to find Allah from deep within us, is to be accompanied by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Beautifully he talks with Allah. And in one place I've read, he says that if the horrors of hell are the only path leading to my God, then I shall open my arms and say, "O flames, embrace me and consume me. For my beloved chooses to burn me." This is how much he's endowed with God. He teaches us one thing, that with God there is no pretense. With Allah, I need to be myself. With the Prophet, maybe I need to guard myself to some extent because humanity dictates that I can't go and open myself to the Prophet to that extent that I feel embarrassed. Even from the Prophet, I can't open myself to the Prophet. But with Allah, we are expected to open ourselves fully. How beautifully the first Imam says, "O Lord, and forgive those of my sins that you have concealed from your angels." Least they turn to you and say, "Look at the sins that he is committing." God feels embarrassed. With God, we need to peel away every layer. How beautifully the Imam approaches God. And he says, "Oh Allah, forgive me. Every sin that I've committed. Oh Allah, even as I seek forgiveness from you, I know I lack sincerity. That after this I will begin to sin once again. Oh Allah, it is not the case that you are not worthy of obedience. I am a weak servant of yours." He says, "Oh Allah, so many times have I decided to appear before you in devotion, but sleep has overpowered me. Oh Allah, is it because you no longer wish to see me? Have I become so unworthy to you? Oh Lord, if I don't come to you, who else should I go to?" What we take back in this world is godliness within our souls. As Hussein ibn Ali says, "What has he found? The one who has lost you. And what has he lost? The one who has found you." This Dua Makarim al-Akhlaq of Imam, the fourth Imam, should be read by all of us. Not ceremonially, but with deep reflection, not only with the mind, but with the heart. Look at how beautifully he talks in this dua. He says, "Oh Allah, when I do good to others, diminish it not by allowing me to oblige them." He says, "Oh Allah, when you raise me a status in front of the people, drop me a status within myself, so that my arrogance does not roar out aloud. Oh Allah, when somebody talks ill of me behind me, allow me to respond with prayers and good words for them. Oh Allah, when somebody wrongs me, allow me to forgive them. Oh Allah, when somebody withholds from me, allow me to share with them. And then to thank you for allowing me to share your bounties, and see it as your favor upon me. Oh Allah, those who hate me, change their hatred towards me with affection. Oh Allah, those who envy me, bring comfort to their heart and give them as much. Oh Allah, when somebody speaks ill of me, let me not respond in an equal fashion. Allow me to speak well of them." The way in which he describes the beauty of the human soul in this is amazing. Oh Allah, Let me be pleased with what you have granted, given for me, destined for me. Let me not want beyond that. And that Hadith al-Qudsi, that beautiful Maulana narrates in the Facebook that we see, he says, Allah is saying, O son of Adam, I do not ask you for the worship of tomorrow, today. Do not ask me for your tomorrow's sustenance today. If I keep you alive tomorrow, I will sustain you. He says, O Allah, let me be pleased with whatever you have decreed for me. If you have decreed sickness for me, let that sickness, let it be bettering my mind and health. Because I know you are caring for me. It's better than what I will choose for my own self. If you keep me in health, let me thank you for it. If you keep me in poverty, let me not go to anybody else. O Lord, let your favors for me be sufficient for me. Do not turn me to other than you, so that I may have to thank them alongside thanking you. Let me not thank anybody but you. Be enough for me, O my Lord. The way in which this dua is constructed is phenomenal. In another place, in Dua Tawbah, he says, Oh Allah, those sins that I have committed now are like reins in the hands of destiny that are directing me to an ill fate. Oh Lord, the sins that I committed, their pleasures have gone, but the burdens remain upon my shoulder, pinning me to the earth. Oh Lord, at this moment, forgive me every sin of mine and free me from its burden. Think to this. Now let us think to ourselves. For somebody to say these words, that shows how their souls have been purged from their arrogance and their ego. This Imam has endured the most that any Imam has endured. But I just want to narrate one little thing and I'll finish. He had a she-camel. And he would always ride on that camel. When the Imam died, the camel went to his grave and began to strike its head against the grave. They came to the fifth Imam, and the fifth Imam said, she is grieving for her master and my father. They took the camel away from that place. It went back and did the same. They brought her away. When the third time it went, the Imam said, let the camel be. It sat there for 3 days and finally the camel died. This is how his soul impacted that animal. The beauty and the purity of his beautiful soul. He would constantly be fasting, praying at night, and doing dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the extent that Lady Zainab feared for his life. So she sent Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari to him. Jabir went to Hazrat Zain al-Abidin and he said, O son of the Prophet Messenger, we fear for your health and for your life. You are worshipping God excessively. You are not eating. You are not resting. And the Imam looked at Hazrat Jabir and he said, how little is my devotion to God in comparison to the way my grandfathers used to worship Allah. Do point out the fact that he, in his dua, says that, oh Allah, whenever any good comes from me, allow me to belittle it. And whenever any favor comes from anybody else, allow me to magnify it and to never forget it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for the sake of our beloved H.Abbas and our beloved Hazrat Zain al-Abidin Salamu alayhi May Allah forgive us our sins. May Allah, for the sake of Babul Hawaii, fulfill the hajat of all those who come with hajat on this day. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cure all those who are sick and unwell. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring ease to all those who are strained in their means. May Allah bring peace and love to this world of ours. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive our mu'mineen and elevate them in their ranks. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cause us to die in the love of Allah and the Prophet and the blessed family of the blessed Prophet. May Allah hasten the reappearance of our beloved Imam and grant us the grand boon of Shahada in His divine presence. You will let us pray Surah Fatiha for all of our mu'mineen.